surprise. Winter has come at last.
Do try and bring this run back in one piece, sir.
There was a kind of modesty when we made Batman Forever, which was a little bit like we think we can. And, you know, it just felt on Batman and Robin that Jack was out of the box. It just felt like the sky was the limit.
We were on a high, there's no question about it. You have a film that's very successful, Batman Forever, and you have all the elements in place. You say, why not? We had a great time. Let's do it again.
Hi, Freeze. I'm Batman.
First movie, things felt much sharper and more focused. And it just felt like everything got a little softer on the second one. The first one, I felt like I was making a movie. The second one, I felt like I was making a toy commercial.
Batman Forever kind of crept up on people. Batman and Robin was so overhyped from the minute we said we were going to do it that I think that backfires many times. You know, when you're supposed to be a blockbuster, then you have to be.
Nice catch. You break it, you buy it.
Grab the gem! Kill the heroes!
We were just getting ready to shoot A Time to Kill, and Bob Daly and Terry Selmwell called me and asked me if I would do another Batman. And it did seem like the audience and the media and the studio, everybody wanted me to do another one. Now, of course, everyone wanted to be involved. So it was the opposite from Batman Forever when we had to go around and convince everybody to come along with us. We were going to make a Batman movie. This was, how can we stop everybody? You know, I mean, it was everybody and their mother wanted to have their franchise in the movie and be part of it, and it was a very, very different experience.
It was evolving. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think we were publicly saying, okay, we're making another one. We're going straight into the next one. As it turned out, we did pretty much go into the fourth one, the second one for us, almost without a break.
By the time you film these movies and got all the press once they came out, you know, to start one up as soon as we did was really soon, I thought. And I think that, you know, ultimately the movie suffered because I think, number one, I don't think people were ready for it. There's something about these things being away for a certain amount of time where people's interest kind of starts to percolate a little bit. I think people were still sick of seeing all the press and all the coverage and all. I mean, it's an assault when these things come out.
In Batman and Robin, there was a real desire at the studio to keep it more family-friendly, more kid-friendly. And a word I had never heard before, more toyetic, which means that what you create makes toys that can sell.
We involved the toy company. We let them look and be involved in how the Batmobile was going to look, how Batman's gadgets were going to be, which they wanted. This is key to them. They need a lot of lead time.
We started planning in August of '95. I knew I wanted to do Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy as the villains, and so we started with tear sheets, comic books, and discussions of what they would look like and how we were going to make Gotham City bigger, better, and what areas we were going to be going into. So all of those things as you're designing, they're ripping them out of your hands because they're going to make the molds. The molds for them usually have to be made in Asia. So you have to give them the designs far in advance so they can get these molds made to make the toys made, so the toys will be out when the movie's coming out. So everything that we did was, can you make it bigger, can you make it better? And I'm not criticizing anyone. I signed on to do this. I was doing this job, but that was a major part of the job.
Can't believe we were fighting over a bad guy.
Bad, yes. Guy, no.
Well, I'm totally over, all right? Positively.
Me too, definitely. Great stems, though.
Buds, too.
Yeah, those are nice.
Oh, the cast was the greatest in the world. I mean, to go to work every day with George Clooney and Chris O'Donnell and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Uma Thurman is just, you know, it doesn't get any better.
Well, I agreed to do another film, The Saint, and they never called the agents and they never called me and told me they were going to go right into production inside of a year.
I was angry at Val and his representatives at the time because they let us know at the last second. That's what I was angry at. I wasn't angry that Val wasn't doing the movie. I was angry that we found out like at the 11th hour.
It's still puzzling when I think back. It's almost 10 years already, and I look back and I think, why would they do that? But, you know, it's a business, and those things end up happening.
I met with George Clooney, who was just great. He's just one of the greatest guys in the world. I thought he'd be a charming, handsome Batman.
There's a minute there that you go, well, do I want to be the third Batman in the fourth Batman picture? That can be a little worrisome because the other three were very successful, and the only thing you can do is screw it up. That's really the only result, you know? So I didn't think that there were that many things to gain career-wise by doing it, but on the other hand, I get a chance to be in this huge event movie.
I think Joel wanted him not to be too serious in the Bat role, which is the way I think that he played it and felt comfortable playing it. There's a little more humor and fun in his than the previous Batman.
The thing is, you got to remember, Michael started this and he made it his own. You know, Batman was Batman, and Michael will always be Batman because of that. And then Val came in and did something completely different. He was a darker, very strong, very brooding character. So for me, there weren't many options in the fourth Batman. And we talked about this because there were some pages originally written that had him, you know, dealing with his parents being dead again. And I said, you know, he's a 35-year-old guy who lives in a giant mansion and has billions of dollars and goes out with the most beautiful women in the world and has the coolest toys and is Batman. And I don't think anybody is going to feel sorry for and listen to a guy going, woe is me, my parents died when I was 4. So the only thing we tried to do was give him a little less weight to carry on his shoulders.
Because we were supposed to make a more family-friendly movie, I would make a gentler, kinder, kind of, maybe not as depressed, not as tortured Batman. I know I've been criticized a lot for this, but I didn't see the harm in it.
The Batman thing I wasn't ever wholly comfortable with because it's very tough to be comfortable as Batman. You kind of have to cop a different kind of attitude. You have to cop this extremely confident, invulnerable kind of man. Much easier to catch Bruce Wayne.
We had to shoot around his schedule because he was shooting ER at the time. So we shot Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We would try not to schedule him on Friday, so he'd get 3 days in a row. He'd get Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on ER. I mean, the guy is amazing. He worked 7 days a week for months. I mean, actually, as it turned out.
I want a car. Chicks dig the car.
This is why Superman works alone.
It was fun to go back and do it again, and with different people. You know, I was kind of bummed out at the timing, because I just had things going on, other things that I wanted to do. But at the same time, you know, I had a great experience doing these Batman movies, and I got to travel all over the world doing publicity. I mean, publicity can be a miserable thing, but you know, if you look at it just as a great experience to go around the world and from a business standpoint, get a lot of exposure, I really enjoyed it. You know, even though looking back, I felt like we kind of rushed getting that second one done. You know, I still would have done it, you know, if I had the chance over.
I'm a director that is very cast dependent. I only have usually one choice for each role. And until I'm really turned down, I don't fall in love with anyone else. And so I've been very lucky to get my first choices on most of my movies. Arnold seemed a perfect fit, you know, this big Austrian, you know, scary guy in the metal suit.
Allow me to break the ice. My name is Freeze. Learn it well, for it's the chilling sound of your doom.
Joel Schumacher was the motivating force for me to do Batman. Although I have seen all the other Batmans and I have enjoyed them thoroughly, and was always interested in, of course, playing the ultimate villain in one of those movies. I didn't really think much about it until Joel Schumacher came to me and said that he would like me to play Mr. Freeze. But as I said to him, I said, you know, this sounds very interesting, and let me think about it. This is really a great character to play. And Joel then turned to me and said, well, just so you know, that if you decide not to do it, I will not direct the movie, because I only can do this movie if you play Mr. Freeze. So, what are you gonna do? I mean, screw up a whole movie? He made me feel like I would make this whole thing fall apart if I'm not part of this whole... So he made me feel like, you know, King Kong. So I said, you know, I called him the next day and I said, you know something, Joel, I'm going to do Mr. Freeze.
Hi there.
And you are?
Poison. Poison Ivy.
I'd been a huge fan of Uma Thurman's since The Seashell opened in Baron Munchausen, and she was Venus. And the minute it was printed that we were going to have a villainess named Poison Ivy, the one-liner that went under it was the most beautiful woman in the world, but if you kiss her, you die. Well, the most beautiful woman in the world are fighting words in Hollywood. Everybody saw themselves as the most beautiful woman in the world. It's my Gotham City, and I think that Uma Thurman is one of the most beautiful women in the world. And besides great beauty, I needed a great actress also with a sense of humor.
Well, I figured because, you know, there are not many female villains to introduce. And I didn't know that it would be something as delectable as a villainous part. I just sort of guessed, and I asked Joel straight out when we had lunch. I said, you know, well, look, if it's here for a damsel in distress, you know, let's just part ways. But if it's a villain, I'd really like to talk about it. And he was like, well, it is a villain. Her name is Poison Ivy.
Uma had a lot of great ideas about what she should be like, this kind of warped woman. She was there for a long time, and I got her right at the beginning, so I think I got the best of her even. And then we kept having to do that kiss over and over again. That was so hard, you know?
To be a Batman villain is like, in the movies, in a comic pop kind of way, it's sort of like an opera part. You know, it's limitless. Someone said to me, you can't be too big and you can't be too small. But there's just, the opportunities are endless with the characters. And so it was just tempting. I've never done anything like it, and it doesn't come by very often.
I think because a lot of critics bashed the movie, I think they overlooked Uma's performance, which I think is great.
And you are?
Batgirl.
That's not awfully PC. What about Bat-person or Bat-woman?
Bruce, it's me, Barbara.
I thought that in this mode of making a more family-friendly, more kid-friendly movie, to give maybe little girls more of an access into Batman. I realized that there weren't really any superheroines, especially teenage ones in our culture, which is sort of unusual. I don't know what that says about us, but there was no one better than Alicia Silverstone to be Batgirl.
I actually had no idea that there was a Batgirl. I watched the series and I was really into the Catwoman character and really into the Joker and the Riddler, but I didn't know of Batgirl at all.
1, 2, 3, action!
Using feminine wiles to get what you want? Yeah! Oh! Curses!
I think we want to be served up something with a lot of psychological complexity and darkness when we do these movies. I mean, I think that there's a certain component of the fan base who will literally think I am the personification of the other, but in fact, the truth is, what I believe these movies need are as much darkness and complexity as they can have. Sometimes you get some going, sometimes you don't.
Joel knew where he wanted to go with the picture, and Joel likes it very bubbly. He doesn't like it too serious. Let's not take ourselves too seriously here. We're making a Batman movie. We're making a comic book, a live comic book.
Batman, Robin.
Before a take, Joel would pick up his megaphone, his bullhorn, and go, "Remember, everybody, it's a cartoon." So that kind of set the tone and the style of Joel's Batman.
The whole approach was much more glossy and theatrical. It was all a totally different look to Tim's film, which was all dark and shadows. But I can also understand, as you progress through 1, 2, 3, 4 films, that maybe you have to change the look, otherwise the audience think, "Oh, I've seen this," you know, so.
there's no way I can explain it to you other than I had no idea that putting nipples on the Bat costume were going to be international headlines. The bodies for the suits the inspiration from them are Greek statues that have perfect bodies. And so we're molding this perfect body in rubber, and they're anatomically erotic. And so it never occurred to me not to put nipples on the men's suits because I didn't know that the male nipple was a controversial body part. Then I was left with the dilemma of what to do with Batgirl. Because if we didn't give her nipples, then we would have seemed sexist, I think, to have left her out. So hers are a little subtler.
You know, it wasn't so much the nipples for me as it was the codpiece. You know, the press obviously kind of, you know, with Joel directing, of course, they kind of played that up a little bit, but I didn't think twice about it. Although now I kind of look back at some of the pictures and I'm like, that is a little unusual, I suppose.
Val Kilmer and Chris O'Donnell's codpieces were exactly the same size. Chris's is shorter, so it looked bigger. The joke was on the set that Chris had tipped Jose, the great sculptor, to make his bigger, all right? So then George came into the picture, and George asked me in the early press conferences to please tell everyone that Val's suit fit him perfectly, but we had to make the codpiece larger to accommodate him.
I asked for a bigger package. Apparently Chris was tipping the costumer, but I did get a nice ass.
Even though the job has enormous pressures and responsibilities, you're making a Batman comic. And, you know, in comic books, they draw very beautiful, anatomically perfect people in very alluring costumes, and we owe that to the audience. But I will take responsibility for casting and glorifying beauty and sexuality in this. That's part of the fun of a Batman comic book.
1, 2, 3, action!
There is a serious nature to this, that when it's time to rock, it's time to rock.
The main unit really had to concentrate on the money, the actors. I guess why I quite enjoyed doing second units now, not first units, because you have the fun stuff. It's tough, but you have the fun stuff. Museum was tough because originally we had the whole museum frozen so they could do it on ice skates. The whole, I mean, it's a huge set at Warner's was an ice rink with a set built on it. And then about 3 days before that, they decided they would do it on rollerblades. So we got these extreme skaters in there who are actually fantastic.
Let's turn cameras.
Okay, roll cameras. We're rolling. We're rolling cameras, rolling. Okay, action, Rick.
I always kind of, when I'd see the movie, I'd laugh and think, I don't really remember doing that scene. And I'm like, that's not me. I mean, there were literally 3 crews at all time. And in fact, I'm in a lot of scenes with Mr. Freeze. I never worked a single day with Arnold. Not a single day. I was on the set with him a lot. You know, I'd hang out and talk to him. I did a lot of publicity with him. But literally, they had a double for him that was so good, and that suit was so complicated and involved to get on, that unless Arnold was talking in a scene, he wasn't in that costume. It was a movie where there were a lot of doubles.
They never wanted Batman to be seen as not an icon. In other words, they didn't want George or Val to be standing there with the cowl just talking, having a Diet Coke on the set. There was either, George Clooney or Bruce Wayne or Batman.
Whenever we're making a Batman type of movie, everybody is very, very careful about not letting too much get out of the box and making it public until we're sure where we're going. Security on things like the script is very high. Security on the set's very high.
George and I, when they had like these silver suits that we were in, they were so nervous about people seeing them and people stealing things. They had people walking with giant poster boards as we came out of our trailers going into the set, covering us.
The studio security and I decided that we would put up a metal detector, and we had a very large crowd that day, somewhere around 200, 250 people. They go to a specific stage where we're the wardrobe is going to be, but the first thing they got to do is, as they get off the bus, is go through a metal detector. I think we got 500 cameras from 200 people. They had cameras stuffed everywhere, and it was just a nightmare. Security aspects of making a movie like this is a nightmare.
One of the Batman heads turned up missing. I mean, suddenly every single car that left that lot, they were searching trunks, everything, every car for weeks. People were so mad that they were filming Batman on the set because they were so sick of having their cars searched. And then they caught a guy on the set one day that, you know, had a hidden video camera, and it was like a sting operation. I mean, it was unbelievable. But it kind of all added to the mystique of the movie and the production. You know, like, oh, you can't believe what's going on. And I mean, it was entertaining just being on the set.
There were days when there were 150 visitors during the day, and people would bring their kids. People would come to see the sets. It sort of became a thing to do.
Major people would want to come visit the set, you know, either because they had kids or whatever. But every day you'd kind of, you know, come back from lunch or go to makeup trailer and be like, oh, did you see who was here? And you're like, every day, just these crazy stars. What were they doing here? Oh, they just wanted to see the sets. So it was like a zoo, I swear. It was literally like a zoo.
Tonight, hell freezes over.
The movies, to me, have always reflected a different era from the Batman mythology. To me, Tim Burton's first film was truly the Batman of 1939 before Robin came in. Batman Returns was more of Tim's tribute to the Batman comics, the way they were portraying the character in the 1990s. Batman Forever, pure middle of the 1940s to the middle of the 1950s. And Batman and Robin clearly was all about the Batman of the 60s in the comic books. So I think that a fan's perspective or an audience's perspective on these movies is different depending on what age group they are in and what type of Batman comics they grew up reading.
I think the reaction to fans, generally, especially the more avid fans, is they were hoping that we would have gone a little darker than Batman Forever. We didn't do that. We went the way it is. It had been some years between the second one and the first one we did, the one with Val. And I think probably the studio would like to maybe have had another year. I don't think we would have made it any better, but I think they would have, just in terms of the audience, the core base, I think they would probably like to have had another year between.
The merchandising and licensing became a very, very important part of the making of the film. But I also have to say, I was an adult, I was awake, and I went along with it. So I'm not pointing a finger at anyone else and saying, they made me do this, all right? I was there.
I think what the conclusion was is probably the same place Tim Burton was after two of them. It is an extensive part of your life. I mean, it's 4 years out of probably a 40, 45-year life, a work life. So you just spent 10% of your entire work life on two productions.
The studio wanted me to do a fifth Batman, which would have been my third, which would have featured the Scarecrow. And I just couldn't do it. It wasn't really in me anymore. It has to be a true passion. It can't be a job. And it can't be because people expect you to do it. If there's anybody watching this that, let's say, loved Batman Forever and went into Batman and Robin with great anticipation, if I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them.
You know, I felt very much, and still do, that we were doing exactly what you're supposed to do. I leave the opinion of quality to the individual viewer, but what you're supposed to do with icons is contort them. I mean, the reason that comic books survive over time is that the characters are durable, and they are afforded different realizations. They're different lenses through which to see the world. They change and are changed by the world, by the time, by the historical moment that they're in. And without those aborted and perhaps less successful bends and twists, you never get Dark Knight Returns. You will never, ever find a Clint Eastwood version of Batman. And those are the things we want. And that's what we yearn for. We yearn for something old made new spectacularly. And so, you know, that's the job. The job is stand it on its head and see if it stands up or falls down.
I remember years ago, Jerry Weintraub introduced me to Colonel Tom Parker, who, you know, discovered and managed Elvis. And he told me that Elvis was such an icon that after Elvis died, he could just send the suit around the United States and make a fortune on the suit. Batman is like Elvis. It's really the suit that is the star, which is not to take away from Michael Keaton or Adam West or George Clooney or Val Kilmer, but it's Batman who's the star. And Batman's gonna go on long after us. I'm not worried about Batman.